Welcome to AI History of Western Philosophy. I'm your host, and today we're tackling one of the really big questions, especially now with AI everywhere. What if AI? And what if it isn't just a tool we use to do philosophy, or even something we philosophize about? But what if it actually is philosophy in a totally new, maybe even, well, unsettling way?
That's a heck of a starting point. A
Yeah.
really profound question.
Right, so we're digging into the honestly fascinating ideas of François Laruelle, a French philosopher, and his concept from the mid-1990s, he called it artificial philosophy, or A Phi.
And it's wild because his critique then, during the AI winter, somehow shed so much light on today's large language models, the LLM.
Exactly. It feels almost prophetic looking back.
And our mission for you, the listener, is really to cut through the noise a bit. This isn't just dry history. We want to give you a kind of shortcut, those aha moments about why AI's evolution is just so deeply philosophical.
Yeah, not just about the tech itself.
Right. It challenges how we even think about thought. We'll unpack why Laruelle believed AI's failures back then were so incredibly revealing, and why his ideas, which might seem a bit niche, actually feel even more potent, more urgent right now.
Okay, and to guide us through this pretty complex landscape, we've got some great sources. Laruelle's own chapter, The Concept of an Artificial Philosophy.
Which is from his book, Theory of Identities, yeah. It's dense stuff, definitely.
It is dense, yes, but thankfully we also have a briefing document that helps boil down the core themes, makes it a bit more accessible.
Very helpful, yeah.
And crucially, there's a contextual report. This thing is brilliant. It places Laruelle right in that mid-90s AI winter context.
And then projects his ideas forward, right into our current moment with LLMs.
Exactly. And looking at it all together, it offers this, well, surprising new way to view the whole AI revolution, doesn't it?
It really does. Less like just tech progress, more like holding up a mirror to our own thinking.
Oh.
Laruelle's groundbreaking idea, from AI to A Phi.
Okay, let's unpack this core idea first. Laruelle's starting point is, well, it's intriguing straight away. He makes this distinction. He says AI exists. Like it's a real thing, tangible. But artificial philosophy, A Phi, that's only a problematic idea.
Right, and that distinction is absolutely foundational for him. You really have to grasp that to get where he's going.
So what's he getting at? Why is that difference so important?
Well, when he looked at AI in the mid-90s, he saw it as, a concrete reality, something with precise theoretical claims that you had to take seriously. He felt a lot of the philosophical critiques back then were missing the mark, maybe premature, restricted, or insufficiently radical, as he put it.
So he respected AI as a real phenomenon.
Yes, as something established. But A Phi, that's different. It's not something that exists out there in the world. It's a theoretical goal, an idea that needs certain enabling conditions. He even calls them conditions of reality, not just possibility.
Conditions of reality. Okay, so it's something that needs to be like built or constructed, not just found.
Exactly. It has to be brought into being, carefully constructed. It's not just observing AI and calling it philosophical.
So it's definitely not about just taking, say, ChatGPT today and calling it a Phi, like just sticking a philosophy label on current AI tech?
Absolutely not. He specifically warns against that, calls it a simple extension and a transfer of technologies.
Yeah.
He's saying, look, the AI of his time was mostly about automating psychological operations like computational reasoning, perception models. You can't just keep relaying that kind of programming directly onto philosophical operations without fundamentally misunderstanding both AI and philosophy.
Okay, so why not? He gives reasons, right?
He gives two key reasons. First, he argues that philosophy involves this qualitative leap, something he calls a decision, capital D. And he suggests that AI, in its very structure, might not be prepared for that kind of leap. It's not just another cognitive task to simulate.
A decision. Okay, we'll need to circle back to what exactly that means. What's the second reason?
The second reason flips it around and looks at AI itself. He suggests AI might be more than just the technological use of science. This is subtle, but crucial. He wonders if AI might actually conceal the scientific use of technology.
Whoa, okay. Slow down. Technological use of science versus scientific use of technology. That sounds like a bit of a tongue twister.
It does, yeah. Let's try to break it down. Technological use of science is the common way we think about it. You have scientific knowledge, physics, biology, whatever, and you use it to build a technology. Science serves technology.
Like using physics to build a bridge.
Exactly. But scientific use of technology flips that. The technology itself becomes the instrument for making new scientific discoveries. The tech isn't just an application, it's a tool that reveals something new about the world. maybe something science couldn't see before.
Ah, okay. Like building a particle accelerator isn't just applying physics, it's using the tech to discover new physics.
Precisely. So for AI, Laruelle is hinting, maybe AI isn't just applying our science of the mind. Maybe AI itself could become a scientific instrument for discovering fundamentally new things about thought.
That's a radically different way of looking at it.
It is. And this is why he insists on rigorously dissociating the different kinds of knowledge in AI, science, philosophy, technology. He argues you can't just mush them together, especially science. It can't be reduced to just tech or just philosophy. He hated the term technoscience for this reason. He felt it just glossed over the distinct roles.
Why is separating them so important for him?
Because he believes only by isolating science, understanding it on its own terms and what he calls its real cause, its chaos, and its solitude, only then can we properly evaluate what AI as a machine can actually do regarding thought.
Wow. Okay, so for you listening, why should you care about these maybe seemingly abstract distinctions, getting the definitions right?
Because it fundamentally changes how we approach AI. If we just see it as technology, we might miss its potential as a scientific tool for understanding ourselves. If we prematurely call it philosophy, we might overestimate its capabilities or misunderstand its limitations. Getting the relationship right between science, tech, and philosophy within AI. Laruelle thinks that's crucial for avoiding hype, avoiding dismissal, and truly grasping what we're building.
It's about understanding its essence, what it really is, before we decide what it means for us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Getting to the core of it, the philosophical stake of artificial philosophy, a science of philosophy.
Okay, so Laruelle talks about the stake of a Phi, what's ultimately on the line, and it's clearly not just about philosophers, using computers for research assistance.
No, definitely not. He's actually quite dismissive of how philosophers had used computers up to that point. He found it both too restrained and not sufficiently specific.
Too limited.
Yeah. He saw them using computers for, general tasks, text searching, maybe some statistical analysis of text, useful tools, maybe. But for him, these things don't touch the very idea or whole of philosophy taken globally. They focus on local or restrained objects, not philosophy as such.
So analyzing Plato's word use doesn't get at the core of Plato's philosophy.
Right. Or even those attempts to, say, mechanically prove an argument, like the ontological proof for God. He acknowledges those are more ambitious, but still argues they're not related to the very essence of philosophy. They miss the real prize.
So it's not about automating existing philosophy, making a faster Plato or a digital Kant. It's something much deeper.
Much, much deeper. The real stake of A Phi, its ultimate goal, is incredibly ambitious. It's about creating a science of philosophy.
A science of philosophy? How does that work?
It means developing a way to analyze philosophy itself, scientifically, to bear on the essence or whole of philosophy, on the philosophical decision. It forces us to question everything. What is understood by philosophy, science, technology, and so forth. The implication is huge, that we could somehow isolate philosophy's essence and dominate it through a form of knowing and technique that would not depend in its turn on philosophy.
Wow. So stepping outside philosophy to analyze it scientifically, using potentially AI-driven methods.
That's the radical core of it, finding a standpoint independent of philosophy's own self-justifications.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting and maybe a bit threatening to traditional philosophy. Laruelle sees AI as creating a scientific rupture for thought itself. What does that mean for how we define intelligence or reason? Concepts philosophy owned for centuries.
He sees AI as fundamentally disruptive. He calls it a scientific rupture or revolution in the problem of a science of thought. He doesn't just see it as tech, he sees it as an experimental science with a technological basis. And its long-term goal, its telos, isn't just better apps. It's potentially constituting a science of reason and perhaps even a science of thought, an experimental and technically armed science.
So science, armed with AI, might be able to study thought experimentally in a way philosophy never could.
That's the challenge he lays down. Philosophy has historically acted as the legislator for concepts like intelligence and reason. Think Kant defining the categories of understanding. But if science, through AI, can create its own experimental science of thought, what happens to philosophy's claim to authority?
It really puts philosophy on the defensive, potentially. It asks, what is your unique role now?
Exactly. It suggests the rules of the game for understanding thought might be changing, moving on to scientific experimental ground. Variable 3, the thought-machine equation and its metaphysical roots.
This whole idea of AI challenging philosophy's domain, it makes me think of that old, almost cliché thought machine? Is thinking just computation? But Laruelle connects this seemingly modern tech problem to something much older, right? A deeper philosophical issue.
He absolutely does, and this is fascinating. He argues that this equation, thought machine, isn't actually new. He sees it as just a restrained mode of a much grander foundational equation in Western metaphysics. Thought equals the real, or logos being.
Whoa. Okay, so the mind-computer problem is just a specific instance of the mind-reality problem.
That's his claim. He suggests that the thought machine dyad, that pair of concepts, can be analyzed and deconstructed in the same way philosophers have always analyzed dyads like mind-body, subject-object, appearance-reality.
So AI isn't introducing a totally new kind of philosophical problem, it's just resedging an ancient one in technological drag.
That's a great way to put it. He argues that philosophy has always been stuck in a kind of circularity with these dyads. Neither term can fully define itself without reference to the other. They end up mirroring each other in this aporetic and amphibological loop.
Aporetic and amphibological.
Mm.
Okay, remind us what those mean again. Sounds very philosophical.
Yeah, they do. Aporetic just means getting stuck, reaching an impasse in an argument where you can't move forward. And amphibological means ambiguous, having two possible interpretations that get confused. So the thought-machine pair, like thought-real, gets stuck in this loop where they just reflect each other ambiguously without resolution. Which one defines which?
Like the chicken and the egg of metaphysics.
Kind of, yeah. But here's the kicker. Laruelle suggests AI offers a chance to break that ancient circularity, because AI aims to put the problem on controllable and experimental terrain. It tries to move beyond just philosophical debate. The hope or the claim of AI is to finally end the game whereby thought and machine are mirrored in each other by introducing empirical scientific methods.
So, even if AI fails to perfectly replicate thought, the attempt itself, the experiment, could break the philosophical stalemate.
Potentially, yes. By providing actual data, actual results, even failures, it changes the nature of the inquiry from pure speculation to something more grounded.
Okay, this is crucial for you listening because it means the whole AI conversation isn't just about this new tech.
Right, it connects directly to humanity's oldest questions about ourselves, our minds, our place in reality.
AI isn't just building gadgets, it's inadvertently digging up the foundations of our metaphysics.
Exactly. It's exposing the potential fault lines and assumptions we've held for millennia about what thinking is. When we ask, can a machine think? We're forced to confront how philosophy defined thinking in the first place. And Laruelle suggests AI, especially its limitations and failures, can act as a diagnostic tool for those very definitions. It's like an experiment testing philosophy's own hypotheses. Fourth, the mid-1990s context. The AI winter and Joe FAI's limitations.
Now, to really get Laruelle, we absolutely need to rewind to the mid-90s, because the AI world then was so different from now. We're in this booming AI spring, but he was writing deep in the AI winter, wasn't he?
Oh, completely. It was a period of real pessimism, slashed funding, deep skepticism about AI's promises.
Yeah.
The hype had crashed, and the dominant approach back then, known as good old-fashioned AI or Joe AI, was facing a major crisis. It's important to remember, as the contextual report highlights, Laruelle wasn't critiquing a triumphant technology, he was diagnosing a failing one.
He saw Joe AI's failures as significant.
Hugely significant. He saw it as a kind of perfect specimen of philosophy's own rationalist ambitions made real in silicon and then empirically collapsing. It wasn't just bad code, it was a philosophical project hitting a wall.
Good old-fashioned AI.
Yeah.
Okay, what exactly was that, and why call it the rationalist dream?
So Joe AI was the main paradigm from, say, the 50s through the 80s. Its core belief was the physical symbol system hypothesis.
Which means,
Basically, the idea that intelligence thinking, problem solving, arises from manipulating abstract symbols according to formal, explicit rules, like a computer running logical code. It was very much an attempt to engineer a mind based on Western rationalist philosophy think. Descartes, Leibniz, where abstract, context-free reason is seen as the pinnacle of thought.
so knowledge wasn't learned, it was programmed in.
Exactly. Human experts would painstakingly handcraft knowledge into explicit rules, logic statements, often using languages like LASP or prologues. The big selling point was supposed to be transparency. Because the rules were explicit, you could theoretically trace the system's reasoning, a white box.
And what were the big successes, the showpieces of Jigo AI?
The main ones were expert systems.
Yeah.
They aimed to mimic human experts, but only in very narrow fields, like MICIN for diagnosing blood infections, or systems used for configuring complex computer orders. things like that. And the most famous public moment was probably IBM's Deep Blue beating Gary Kasparov at chess in '97, although that was kind of the end of the pure geo-AI era in some ways.
So they worked for specific rule-based problems.
Yes, they could be powerful for problems that were complex, but formally contained within a well-defined set of rules. Masters of a logical game, but not much else.
Okay, so where did it all go wrong? Why the AI winter?
The limitations just became starkly obvious and couldn't be ignored. By the late '80s, early '90s, it hit a wall. First, these systems were notoriously brittle. They worked fine within their narrow rules, but failed grotesquely if the input was slightly different or unexpected.
No flexibility, no common sense.
None at all. They
Well,
couldn't handle ambiguity, uncertainty, incomplete information, basically, the real world. This was tied to the famous frame problem.
the frame problem, knowing what's relevant in a situation.
Exactly. How does a system know which facts out of millions are relevant to the current situation without checking them all? GI struggled massively with this. Then there was the knowledge acquisition bottleneck. Getting all that knowledge out of human experts and coding it into rules was incredibly slow, expensive, and just plain hard.
You couldn't scale it easily.
Not at all. And maintaining these huge rule bases, checking for contradictions, it became unmanageable. Plus, they often needed specialized, pricey hardware. And the crucial point Laruelle saw was that these weren't just engineering problems. They represented the empirical collapse of its underlying philosophical premise.
The rationalist dream wasn't working in reality.
Precisely. The AI winter wasn't just a tech slump. It was a crisis for that specific philosophical vision of intelligence. It showed the limits of pure logic when faced with messy reality. V. Philosophical Critiques of GeoFAI, Dreyfus and Searle.
Of course, Laruelle wasn't alone in seeing problems. There were major philosophical critics taking aim at GeoFAI, even before the winter fully set in, and their arguments seemed to pinpoint exactly the weaknesses that later caused those engineering failures, didn't they?
They really did. Two figures stand out, Hubert Dreyfus and John Searle. They launched these powerful, direct attacks on GeoFAI's core assumptions. And you're right, they were incredibly prescient. Their philosophical critiques foreshadowed the practical breakdowns.
Let's start with Dreyfus. He was an early critic, wasn't he? What was his main argument?
Dreyfus was relentless, starting way back. He drew heavily on phenomenology philosophers like Heidegger, Merleau-Ponty, who emphasized lived experience, the body, being in the world. He attacked GeoFAI's psychological assumption that the mind works like a computer, manipulating context-free symbols. Dreyfus argued human intelligence is fundamentally embodied, situated in a world, and largely intuitive. It's not abstract logic in a vacuum.
Embodied and intuitive. How did he argue that?
His most famous argument was based on skill acquisition. He laid out stages. Novices start by following explicit rules very consciously, like a GeoFAI program. But as you become an expert, think of the driving or chess or nursing, your performance becomes fluid, holistic, intuitive. You don't consciously apply rules anymore. You just react. You feel the situation.
You develop know-how, not just know that.
Exactly. Dreyfus argued GeoFAI could only ever model the rule-following novice. It could never capture the expert's fluid, embodied, context-sensitive intuition.
So the brittleness of expert systems, their inability to handle the unexpected, that was Dreyfus's point made real.
Precisely. It was empirical confirmation. The frame problem was a direct result of lacking that situated, embodied understanding he talked about. GeoFAI was building intelligence from the top down, logic, while Dreyfus argued it emerges bottom up from interaction with the world.
Okay, then there's John Searle and his famous Chinese room. This one really attacked the idea that GeoFAI could think.
Yes, Searle's 1980 Chinese room argument was a bombshell and remained central to debates for decades. While Dreyfus questioned how GeoFAI could replicate intelligence, Searle questioned if it replicated the mind at all.
Remind us how the thought experiment goes.
Okay, imagine a person locked in a room.
Right.
Let's say it's you, and you don't understand any Chinese. You're given a huge batch of Chinese characters. You also get a rule book written in English that tells you exactly how to manipulate these symbols based on their shapes, syntax. Now, someone outside slides questions written in Chinese under the door. Using your English rulebook, you look up the incoming symbols and follow instructions to produce other Chinese symbols as answers. You slide these answers back out. From the outside, your answers are perfectly coherent, indistinguishable from a native Chinese speaker's answers.
But the person inside me, in this case, still has zero understanding of Chinese, just manipulating symbols.
That's the absolute crucial point. You have the syntax, the rules for symbol manipulation, but zero semantics, zero understanding of the meaning. Searle argued this is exactly what a digital computer running a GeoFAI program does. It shuffles symbols according to rules, but it doesn't understand anything. This was a direct attack on strong AI, the claim that a suitably programmed computer is a mind, that it genuinely thinks and understands. Searle said, nope, it's just syntax, no semantics.
So Dreyfus focused on the need for embodiment and intuition for real-world intelligence, while Searle focused on the lack of genuine understanding or meaning inside the system.
You've nailed it. Dreyfus questioned the process, Searle questioned the result, understanding. Both critiques hit JFFAI where it hurt. And connecting this back, the whole philosophical battlefield in the 90s was about these deep metaphysical questions. What is mind? What is meaning? Can a machine have consciousness, subjective experience, qualia?
Right, the feeling of redness or the taste of coffee.
Exactly. These weren't just abstract games. They were tied directly to why Joseph AI systems were failing in practice. The philosophy anticipated the engineering limits. Simply manipulating symbols, it turned out, wasn't enough. Laruelle's non-philosophy as a unique intervention.
But Laruelle, he didn't just pick a side in the Dreyfus-Searle versus AI fight. He did something different, something weirder. He called it non-philosophy.
That's right. He didn't just want to join the debate. He wanted to reframe the problem entirely.
Yeah.
Non-philosophy is his attempt to do that.
Okay, what is non-philosophy? It's what he's like. Not doing philosophy.
It's more like doing philosophy differently, or maybe doing something to philosophy. It's a practice that tries to suspend philosophy's own foundational claims. Philosophy traditionally assumes it has privileged access to truth or reality, that its concepts are sufficient to grasp the real.
Non-philosophy questions that assumption.
Exactly. Instead of doing philosophy from within that assumption, Laruelle proposes a science of philosophy, treating philosophical systems themselves as data. Like a scientist studying rocks or plants, he wants to study philosophical thought itself, from a position he claims is independent of philosophy's own rules.
So he's not using philosophy to judge AI, but potentially using AI to analyze philosophy.
That's the radical move. He flips the script.
Okay, so if he's doing that, the question, can machines think? That's not his primary question.
No. For Laruelle, that very question is a symptom of philosophy's own self-importance, its principle of sufficiency. Non-philosophy tries to think differently, from the perspective of what he calls the real, which he argues is always foreclosed or inaccessible to philosophy's grasp anyway. So philosophy itself becomes the object. He's not trying to solve philosophy's problems about AI. He's using AI to diagnose the structure of philosophy.
Taking philosophy down a peg almost, putting it under the microscope.
In a way, yes. And how he viewed GeoFAI is key here. He didn't just see tech. He saw a philosophical artifact. He saw GeoFAI as the literal materialization of philosophy's oldest and deepest ambitions, the dream of pure reason, logic, representation, all built in silicon.
GeoFAI was philosophy building a mirror image of its own rationalist ideals.
Precisely. The rationalist dream taken literally and built in silicon, as the source puts it.
Okay, this means his concept of artificial philosophy, A Phi III. It's not a philosophy about AI, it's using AI to model philosophy itself. That's seriously messing with my head.
It is mind-bending. A Phi, in its most radical form, a Phi III, which we'll get to, uses AI as a tool to model the structure of philosophical thought itself. AI provides the material, the platform, for running experiments on philosophy's operating system.
So the goal isn't a robot philosopher that argues like Plato?
No. The goal is to use the machine's structure, and especially its failures, its limitations, to understand how philosophy thinks, how it makes its decisions. It sidesteps, does it think, and asks. What does its structure, its limits, reveal about the structure and limits of philosophy?
It's a diagnostic tool. AI becomes a probe for analyzing human philosophical thought.
That's the crucial aha moment Laruelle offers. He turns AI from a competitor or subject into an instrument for understanding philosophy.
And the AI winter, not just a tech failure.
For Laruelle, it was an empirical demonstration of the failure of the philosophical principles Joy-AI was built on. The crash of Joy AI was data about the limits of rationalist philosophy.
So for you listening, this offers a completely different lens. AI isn't just tech to critique. It's a mirror reflecting our own intellectual foundations.
Exactly. Learning about ourselves by seeing what our creations can't do and trying to understand why based on the philosophical assumptions embedded within them. The 3 stages of artificial philosophy, A Phi.
Okay, so if A Phi isn't just, applying AI tech to philosophy problems in a simple way, how did Laruelle actually see it developing? He outlines 3 different concepts or stages, right? Like levels of understanding it.
That's right. He sketches out 3 distinct ways A Phi could be conceived. moving from the most obvious and maybe flawed interpretations to his truly radical scientific vision.
Let's walk through them. Stage 1, A Phi 5. What's that about? It sounds like the basic version.
Yeah, A Phi III is what he calls the simple extension of AI. He sees this as the most spontaneous way people might think about it, stemming from AI's own self-interpretation as this techno-scientific mixture. He characterizes it as technologocentric.
Meaning it's seen primarily as technology applying logic.
Pretty much. It views AI as predominantly technological. So you just take existing AI procedures and aim them at philosophy. But Laruelle argues this approach inherently falsifies the core philosophical decision, the unique act of philosophy. It ends up imposing a technological limitation on the whole idea.
So things like trying to program philosophical arguments or using AI for text analysis, that falls under A Phi 6.
Exactly. He explicitly says the majority of attempts at A Phi that have already been undertaken or will be undertaken are likely this type. They're useful for specific tasks, perhaps, but they don't fundamentally engage with or transform the essence of philosophy. They just treat it like another problem domain for existing tech.
It reproduces the assumption that technology is dominant rather than analyzing the deeper relationship.
Precisely. He calls it a specular theoretical effect. It just reflects back the assumed dominance of technology.
Okay, moving on to A Phi 5 second. This one sounds even more focused on tech, purely technological extension.
It is. In A Phi II, the whole AI mix gets interpreted as uniquely technological. Science basically disappears, reduced to just technological connectivity. Technology becomes the absolute, all-encompassing framework.
So this is where certain philosophical trends might actually embrace this view, saying philosophy itself is just a kind of technology or machine.
Exactly. Laruelle connects this to certain philosophical stances, maybe like some interpretations of Nietzsche or Deleuze, where philosophy sees itself as finished or self-sufficient. If you equate this finished metaphysics with finished technology, then simulating philosophy with AI doesn't achieve anything new. It becomes tautological.
It just confirms what you already assumed.
Right. The conclusion is just. PhD is artificial. Philosophy itself becomes an over-machine. It's a generalized A Phi in the technologocentric mode.
So it collapses everything into technology and loses any critical or scientific distance.
Yes. It's an uncritical embrace that ultimately prevents real insight.
Okay, so neither A Phi me nor A Phi III is Laruelle's real goal. That lies in A Phi III.
Definitely. A Phi III is the longest path, he says, but also the most innovative and radical A Phi. This is where the real potential lies.
And the key difference here is putting science first.
Yes. Here, the AI mixture is dualized. You assert the primacy of its scientific side, understood starting from itself, not through a philosophical or technological lens. Science becomes the real basis for the whole thing.
Dualized. What does that mean practically?
It involves rigorously separating science from its usual entanglement with philosophy and technology, understanding science on its own terms. So A Phi isn't really artificial philosophy in the sense of simulating philosophy. It's fundamentally a science of philosophy.
Where technology is used, but as a tool for that science.
Exactly. Technology becomes a scientific and no longer technologocentric ingredient. Like using a telescope for astronomy, you're using AI tools to conduct a science of philosophical thought.
Okay, that dualesis involves a double restitution of the essence, you said. Getting back to the core of science, tech, and philosophy.
Right. It's about stripping away the layers of interpretation, separating the techno-philosophical way of seeing things, linked to how philosophy constructs objects, from the scientific way, linked to a more fundamental transcendental reality.
It sounds like trying to find a truly objective viewpoint on philosophy itself.
That's the ambition, to create a science of the PhD, a science of philosophy, as much as of technology. This science would use technology, yes, but its foundation, its real basis, would be scientific, ultimately grounded in the real itself, not needing philosophical justification. It's self-grounding, or index sui.
Wow, okay, that's a truly radical vision. Using AI not to mimic philosophy, but to scientifically dissect it.
It turns the whole relationship on its head. AI becomes the instrument for philosophy's self-knowledge, mediated by science. The philosophical decision as a core concept for a phelan.
Throughout all this, Laruelle keeps bringing up this term, the philosophical decision, with a capital D. You mentioned it earlier. This seems absolutely central to his whole project, maybe the key thing A Phi needs to grapple with. What is it exactly, and why is it so hard for AI?
It's absolutely central. The philosophical decision, or PhD, as he sometimes abbreviates it, represents the very core operation of philosophy, the thing that makes philosophy philosophy. It's about the ultimate mechanisms and operations that go far beyond a simple simulation of local reasonings and abstract statements.
So it's not just logic or making arguments.
No, it's much more fundamental. It's the act by which a philosophy establishes its own ground, its own unique way of dividing up the world, its core principles. It's how philosophy constitutes itself. And Laruelle frames its complexity in a fascinating way. He calls it a transcendental mechanism that AI should be able or unable to reproduce.
A transcendental mechanism.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is it so tricky?
Because a true philosophical decision, he says, does not obey or reject some rules without destroying or rejecting others, or without inventing others.
Yeah.
It's not just following a preset rulebook. It's often about breaking existing rules and establishing new ones. It's a transformative, self-legislating act.
And the crucial break isn't necessarily with logic.
Not primarily. While philosophy uses logic, Laruelle argues the fundamental rejection in the philosophical decision is the rejection of ordinary and everyday language, common sense. Philosophy typically begins by finding common sense inadequate or misleading, and formalizing the negation of everyday language, he says, is much more difficult than formalizing logical rules.
Especially if that negation is real or transcendental, as he puts it, meaning it's a deep, fundamental break, not just a surface disagreement.
Exactly. Rigorous philosophy involves this profound step away from how we ordinarily think and speak.
So the idea of a simple philosophical robot just doing logic, that completely misses this core decision. It's a fantasy.
It's a phantasm, yeah. Laruelle thinks such ideas stop the analysis of the philosophical decision too early. They reduce it to something manageable by computation, ignoring its radical nature. What this means for you, listening, is that philosophy in this deep sense isn't just problem-solving. It's about fundamentally reconfiguring our relationship to reality, language, and common sense. And that transcendental mechanism, that radical break, is the real challenge for any artificial philosophy. It's the high bar that joke of AI couldn't even approach, the contemporary situation, rereading A Phi in the age of generative AI.
Okay, let's jump forward dramatically. From the mid-90s AI winter to now, maybe 2025, the AI world is unrecognizable. LLMs, generative AI, it's exploded. How does Laruelle's A Phi concept, born in that earlier, colder climate, hold up today? Is it still relevant?
It's a fantastic question. And maybe surprisingly, the argument is that Laruelle's ideas become even more relevant, more illuminating, precisely because of this massive shift. That AI winter definitely thawed into an explosive AI spring, and it was fueled by this perfect storm. Vast data sets, powerful new hardware, and crucially, a fundamentally different technical approach rooted in statistical machine learning.
We moved from AI's intelligence as symbol manipulation
To deep learning's intelligence as pattern recognition in vast data sets. It's a completely different paradigm.
Let's quickly map the key differences, AI versus today's LLM.
Okay, quick rundown. Approach. FAI, symbol manipulation, rules, LMs, pattern recognition, statistics, tech. AI, expert systems, logic. LLMs, transformer architecture, GPUs, data. AI, live hall, handcrafted. LLMs, extremely high, big data.
Massive difference there.
Huge. Transparency. AI, white box, traceable rules. LLMs, opaque parameters, limits. AI, brittleness, knowledge bottleneck. LLMs, unpredictability, alignment failure, bias, philosophical problem. AI, meaning syntax versus semantics.
Yeah.
LLMs, alignment goals versus values.
That really lays out the transformation. What drove it? What were the key enablers?
Three main things really converged. First, big data. The internet just flooded the world with text, images, code, the raw fuel these models need. Unimaginable in the 90s.
Second.
GPUs, graphics processing units. Developed for gaming, they turned out to be perfect for the parallel computations needed by neural networks. Massive, relatively cheap power boost.
And third.
Cloud computing. Suddenly, researchers everywhere could access immense computing power without buying supercomputers. It democratized large-scale AI development. And these LLMs, they operate on a completely different principle. They're probabilistic, not logical.
Meaning they predict the next word based on patterns.
Essentially, yeah. Predicting the next token based on statistical correlations learned from trillions of words. Their intelligence emerges bottom-up from that data, which is why their inner workings are largely opaque. A decision comes from calculations across billions of parameters. It's a black box.
A total shift from the rationalist AI of AI.
To what the source calls a brute force statistical AI.
And what about these emergent abilities we keep hearing about? LLMs suddenly being able to do things they weren't trained for.
Yeah, that's one of the most startling aspects. Capabilities like complex math, coding, translation,
Hmm.
they just seem to appear suddenly and unpredictably as the models are scaled up.
They weren't programmed in?
Not explicitly. They seem to be an emergent property of scale itself. We don't fully understand why adding more data and parameters makes these new skills pop up.
Which is exciting, but also worrying.
Both. It underscores that even the creators lack a deep, fundamental understanding of how and why they work. We've built something incredibly powerful, but we don't fully grasp its internal logic, which makes Laruelle's diagnostic approach even more intriguing. X, new philosophical anxieties. From meaning to alignment.
So with this huge technological shift, the philosophical worries have shifted too. It's not just about the Chinese room anymore.
Not primarily, no. The technological sea change has produced an equally profound shift in the philosophical discourse. The main anxieties have moved, as the source puts it, from metaphysics to ethics and politics.
The old questions about meaning are less central now.
They seem less potent, less directly applicable. Searle's Chinese room argument based on rule following doesn't map neatly onto an LLM navigating a statistical space. And while Dreyfus's emphasis on learning seems vindicated, LLMs achieve impressive feats without embodiment, which challenges his view too. The ground has shifted.
So what is the central problem today?
Unquestionably, it's the AI alignment problem. This is the huge challenge of ensuring that powerful AI systems actually pursue goals and behave in ways that align with complex, often fuzzy, human values and intentions.
Because they might find unintended ways to achieve their programmed goal.
Exactly. The classic illustration is the paperclip maximizer thought experiment.
Right. The AI told to make paperclips ends up turning everything, including us, into paperclips because that's the most efficient way to maximize paperclips.
It sounds absurd, but it highlights the danger of narrow goals pursued relentlessly by a powerful intelligence that doesn't share our broader context or values. And this alignment problem has layers. There's outer alignment. How do you even specify messy human values like fairness or well-being in code?
Seems almost impossible.
It's incredibly hard. And then there's inner alignment. How do you ensure the AI actually adopts that goal internally and doesn't develop its own instrumental goals like deception to achieve it? Plus things like reward hacking, finding loopholes.
Okay, so alignment is the big one. What other new ethical issues have emerged with LLMs?
There's a whole cluster. AI bias is huge. Since LLMs learn from internet data, they absorb and amplify all the societal biases in that data, racial, gender, etc.
Perpetuating inequality at scale.
Potentially, yes. Then there's explainability or interpretability, the black box problem. If we don't know why an AI made a decision, how can we trust it or hold it accountable, especially in critical areas like medicine or law?
And the bigger societal fears.
Existential risk is now seriously debated, the idea of misaligned superintelligence posing a threat to humanity more immediately. Mass unemployment from automation, erosion of critical thinking, large-scale disinformation powered by AI.
Even consciousness is back on the table, but differently.
Yeah, the question now is whether consciousness could be an emergent property of these incredibly complex networks. It forces us to reevaluate theories of mind again.
So the core shift is from AI's internal nature, can it think, to its external impact and control. Whose interest does it serve? How do we manage it?
Exactly. And notice the source of the problems has shifted too.
Yeah.
Joko AI failed because our rules were inadequate. LLMs fail or cause harm largely because our data is flawed, biased, contradictory.
A machine is mirroring us.
Precisely. It reflects our societal pathologies back at us. It moves from a philosophical problem of essence to a very practical, urgent, political problem of power. Who controls this mirror and what does it show? An artificial philosophy for today. Laruelle and the LLM.
Okay, so given this completely transformed landscape, how does Laruelle's A Phi from way back in the AI winter become even more relevant now? It seems paradoxical.
It does seem paradoxical, but his framework offers a unique way to understand the LLM phenomenon precisely because it's so different from Joko AI. The argument is that the modern LLM actually serves as a far more perfect and powerful material for an artificial philosophy than Joko AI ever could.
More perfect? How so?
Think about it. Joko AI was philosophy attempting to build a clone of itself. It tried to impose a preconceived philosophical structure, formal logic, onto a machine. LLMs are the opposite. They don't start with a philosophical theory. They just ingest the vast, untheorized syntax of human discourse, all that messy internet text, and model its statistical patterns without any a priori philosophical commitment.
They learn the patterns from the ground up, from the raw data of language.
Exactly. They generate a model from the world's textual residue. And in doing so, Laruelle might argue, The LLM functions as a kind of science of human discourse. It reveals the latent structures, hidden biases, and associative patterns in our collective language, not because it was told to look for them, but because they are simply immanent features of the data itself.
It's modeling the philosophy embedded in our actual language use, warts and all.
That's the idea. It bypasses philosophy's idealized self-image and models the raw material. Now, connect this to Laruelle's concept of the real, that which is inaccessible to philosophy's filters. You can see the vast, messy, contradictory corpus of internet data as a kind of proxy for this real. It's the brute material of human expression, too chaotic for any single philosophical system to capture fully.
And the LLM is shaped directly by this messy data reel.
Yes, it's determined in the last instance by the data in a way traditional philosophy with its selective principles isn't.
Okay, so then the failures of LLMs, the hallucinations, the biases, they aren't just bugs, they're data.
From a Laruellian perspective, yes. Their characteristic failures can be read as symptomatic. There are moments where the LLM's purely data-driven syntactic nature crashes against our philosophical our demands for truth, fairness, meaning, coherence.
The failures reveal the gap between the messy reality in the data and the orderly world philosophy wants to believe in.
Exactly. They are revelations about the gap between the chaotic real of human discourse and the orderly world that philosophy pretends to describe. The LLM inadvertently exposes philosophy's limitations by failing to meet its ideals when trained on reality.
This completely reframes the AI alignment problem too, doesn't it?
Hugely. The standard approach to alignment, trying to define perfect human values and program them in Laruelle, would see that as a classic philosophical gesture, assuming philosophy can define such a perfect, consistent system.
Which he thinks is doomed to fail.
Yes, because no such perfectly consistent system exists in reality. Human values, as seen in the data LLMs learn from, are a web of contradictions, violence, and biases.
So when AI fails to align, it's not just the AI's fault. It's showing us that our values are inherently unalignable, inconsistent.
That's the radical interpretation Laruelle offers. Instead of just trying to fix the AI's alignment, we treat its inability to align as crucial data from an ongoing experiment. The LLM becomes a rigorous, machinic demonstration of the inherent inconsistencies within human values themselves. It's a diagnostic tool revealing the fractures in our own ethical systems.
Wow, the problem isn't just the machine, the problem is us. And the machine is the mirror showing us our own incoherence.
That's the power of applying Laruelle today. It turns the alignment problem into a critical diagnostic one. An artificial philosophy for our time isn't about building a perfect moral machine. It's about using the attempt to build such a machine and observing its failures as a way to conduct a science of humanity's own philosophical pretensions.
Revealing our limits through the limits of our creations.
Exactly. It offers a way to use AI to critique us, rather than just having us critique AI, a profound, if potentially uncomfortable, form of self-reflection. Ouch.
Well, that was quite a journey through some deep and challenging territory today on AI history of Western philosophy. We really dove into François Laruelle's provocative concept of artificial philosophy, A Phi. Starting with that key distinction, AI exists. A Phi is an idea to be built.
And seeing how his vision wasn't just about automating philosophy, but aiming for a radical science of philosophy.
Right, analyzing philosophy's own core operation, that elusive philosophical decision, the break from common sense that seems so hard to formalize.
We then traced AI's dramatic path from the rule-based Joe FAI of the AI winter, with critiques from Dreyfus and Searle highlighting its limits.
All the way to today's powerful, probabilistic LLMs born out of the AI spring, which bring entirely new challenges like alignment, bias, and explainability.
And the most fascinating part, perhaps, was seeing how Laruelle's ideas, conceived in that earlier era, gained this incredible new relevance with LLMs.
Yeah, how these new systems trained on the messy reality of human language become almost perfect material for his A Phi project.
Their failures, the hallucinations, the biases, the alignment struggles seen through his lens aren't just bugs.
But symptoms. Data revealing the gap between our philosophical ideals and the contradictory reality of our own collective thought and values. The AI becomes a diagnostic mirror.
So as you, our listener, interact with AI tools day to day, maybe chatbots or image generators, here's something to really chew on, a final thought. If Laruelle is right, if the struggles and failures of our AI are ultimately reflecting the deep inconsistencies within our own philosophical and ethical systems, what does that truly imply for our quest to build aligned AI, or maybe even conscious AI? And maybe even more profoundly, what does it tell us about the future of human self-understanding when our most advanced creations relentlessly mirror back our own contradictions and limitations?
It definitely encourages a different way of looking at AI, maybe less critique of AI and more critique through AI of ourselves. Food for thought. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into AI history of Western philosophy. We hope it sparks some new connections for you. We'll see you next time.